All right, so now that we've heard from both sides of the great podcast debate, these are my general thoughts on everything for whatever it's worth. I definitely think that assuming the worst, assuming that we find ourselves in more of a recession, we'll definitely see some shakeouts in the media space, in the podcasting space. I think it's going to most heavily impact the big media companies and the big players in the podcast game. You're going to see less ad revenue flowing through. I think that could have a bit of a trickle down effect on some of these smaller creators who also rely on advertising revenue. But ultimately, the little guy isn't as reliant. Someone who's starting their own podcast, especially from scratch, they're not as reliant on advertising revenue, at least in the beginning. They might even be a little bit more willing to kind of put in the effort to make a splash and make a name for themselves. I think as this shakeout happens, if it happens, you're going to see people exit the industry, and then you're going to see smaller creators probably seizing the opportunity to jump in and try to make a name for themselves. In fact, I'm kind of hoping that's what happens. I think that whatever sort of correction we see within the industry brings upon some new creative podcast formats and innovation, and I hope it comes from the little guy versus from the top down. I think that's the way that it should be. One thing I also noticed in going through all of this is that really the focus that they mention when it comes to advertising sales is really on the audio podcasting side. But podcasting these days is so much more than just audio. Yes, we talk about the lack of tech and innovation, but the evolution, like podcast has evolved quite a bit. You almost can't call a podcast if it's only audio. Video now is such a big component of podcasting. So, take that for what it's worth. I do believe that the market is saturated. I do think that because of the sort of mainstream appeal that podcasting has now, you've seen just a huge influx of people jumping into the space. I think that is due for a correction. I think you'll ultimately have people that, sort of get over podcasting, but I also don't think podcasting is going anywhere anytime soon. I think it'll be around for a while, and it will continue to evolve. I think it's just one of those, it's been around since 2004, and it's seen a lot of changes. So I think there's still tons of potential within the space. Just overall, I don't see podcasting going anywhere. I think there's a lot of untapped potential within the medium that we will see some big innovation in the next few years for sure, or at least I'm hoping so, and I'm happy to be along for that ride. I think a lot of the doomsday predictions that get thrown out there are usually exaggerated. People like to put stuff in articles to get clicks. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as some of the experts think it's going to be. But, ultimately, hopefully 2023 will be a year of opportunity rather than despair for aspiring and existing podcasters around the world.